brought to you by the South Dakota Stock Growers and the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Hi, I'm James. Welcome to another edition of Homegrown. On this week's episode, we're going to talk all about soil health and what some unique ranchers are doing to promote that within our industry. We're going to visit Sean Freeland and the Dry Creek Farm and Ranch by Caputa, South Dakota. We're going to go look at the Jorgensen outfit down by Ideal, South Dakota. And we're also going to visit with Casey Canopy and the Canopy Ranch by New Underwood, South Dakota. One of the things that's really cool to note, so we're right here looking out as far as we can see. It's December, and this is as green as you can be. I mean, there is photosynthesis happening right here. And if you look across a lot of our cropscape right now today, a lot of it would be completely dormant, if not bare soil.
Correct.
And why don't we have more people with a field looking like this right now? Because this obviously is doing what you're just talking about,
exactly.
Capturing that sun's energy even well into the fall.
What we've learned really is by watching and emulating the native prairie system. And it has a live, living plant, living root, 365 days a year. And so what we have learned from watching the native prairies is that as long as we can have a living root in this soil, and as long as we can integrate livestock and not disturb the surface of the soil too much, we can then begin to rebuild that soil system to what it used to be.
And so when we talk about some of them principles of soil health and soil management, you know, I'm certainly no expert on some of that, but one of them is integrating livestock,
Correct.
which you're doing. One of them is keeping that living root in the soil
Correct.
for as long as we can. Another one that I'm just looking down and saying is we want soil armor, right?
Soil
we want
armor.
something covering that soil. And I'm out here in the middle of a grain field looking at my feet, and I don't even see any bare soil.
That's
I mean,
right.
this is so thick and lush.
That's right.
That there is no way a raindrop is going to hit actual soil. It's going to hit some of this vegetation on top and disperse and then just permeate into the soil.
Exactly. And you've mentioned 3 of the 5. The other 2 are basically crop diversity. Just like in the native system, you have no single species ever in nature. So the soil systems love diversity. And the last thing is low disturbance. And so we come out here with very low disturbance equipment when we seed. We're not opening up that soil profile. And so you hit on all 5. And we try and do that on every acre that we farm.
And so even though right now we have a monoculture of winter wheat out here, in the previous couple of years, you've had a big diversity of cover crops out here that have built that soil. So now you're going to come in here, you're going to take some seeds off it, and I'm assuming in the future again, you're going to add more diversity, and you're going to do that not by deep plowing this up or even tilling this up. You're just going to probably come across here with really minimum till equipment and not disturb that underground ecosystem.
Yeah, so this is a monocultural system right now. But we follow this system. After we harvest this wheat next July, we will come right back in here and plant a very diverse mix of cover crop that will grow in through the late summer months into the fall, and that's where we'll integrate the livestock.
So you're going to be getting a couple of crops off this next year. You're going to be harvesting some wheat, and then you're going to go right back in and drill some more crops in here, and you're going to be grazing that next fall and integrating that livestock again.
That is correct.
Oh, I know you guys are really big on the rumen and the microbial activity in the soil and how those things correlate. Can you explain that?
Sure.
I mean, in layman's terms, how those things work together, because you've had those rumen, not just a hoof out here, you've had rumens out here too.
Yeah, that's the fundamental purpose of having a hoof out here, is to get that perfect marriage of the rumen and the soil system back together where they belong. The rumen is an intensively active, biologically active part of the stomach of a cow that has the ability to take most any carbon source that it consumes and break it down into elements of nutrition for that animal. The soil is very, very much the same in that it is a factory of a very dynamic biological system that has the ability to take the plant's ability to convert sunlight into carbohydrates, use those as an energy source, and then breaking down the elements in the soil to feed the plant. And so the two together, the rumen and the soil, share the biological nature, okay? The rumen will add the dimension of biology to the soil while consuming the carbon elements of the soil.
And so those cows are out here not all the time, but they're out here and they're physically trampling some of that leftover residue into the soil. Right. They're consuming some of the growth there. They're defecating some of that out with the biology going through their body, decomposing into the soil, and so it's all getting mixed together and it's creating this self-sustaining system.
All the while we're capturing sun energy and taking that and converting that to carbohydrates for the system as well. So that is really the cycle of life. I dug up a few samples here. On this sample here, this actually came from a fence row, which it's the closest thing we have right now to a native prairie system.
Okay.
It's undisturbed for many years.
Sure.
Hasn't been tilled. The main thing I wanted to indicate and point out here is the texture of this soil, of how beautifully dark and crumbly it is. It looks a lot like chocolate cake. Right. There's tons of porosity in here. So that gives the soil the ability to take in water and take in oxygen and air, and that's what really sustains the biological activity
of that root. And even the living organisms under the soil need some air, need some water.
Absolutely.
But they can't be inundated with it. They've got to have those pores so that they can live.
Yep, we have both aerobic and anaerobic bacteria in the soils. So there's kind of a mixture of all those different things, but by and large, oxygen has to be present in this system in order to sustain a majority of that biological activity. You notice there is no plow layers here because there hasn't been a plow in that part of the soil for forever. So you're not going to see those layers. If you look at this, actually is a sample that came out of the field that we're in right here, and you're going to notice a little bit of that plating right here, and that's just from years of traffic, you know, right. In other words, just the normal activities of farming. But it wasn't such that I couldn't get through it. And you'll notice that the roots went right through it.
Right. Yeah,
they broke right through that.
Through there.
But it's different than this in that, but we've had traffic, and we've had livestock traffic, we've had equipment traffic over many years, but we have not been tilling. This hasn't been tilled in probably 32 years.
Wow.
So, but you're going to see a definitive layer there. But underneath that layer,
yeah, you're still
very crumbly. The texture is very different. It's very good. It's a little bit different than this, but it's getting there.
Ground's still pretty frozen, but here we're able to get in because we got cover, but there's frost down there. So then if it was warmer, we would see life, we'd see earthworms and that sort of thing, but there should be some, you know, a trace of life, like we should see wormholes in here. And so this is what I'm looking for. You can see this top layer right here. That's all new soil getting built right there.
Sure.
So would be high in organic matter.
That's just falling apart. I mean, there's so many different aggregates or little pieces there that obviously the water and the air can move down into the soil pretty freely and pretty easily.
Even like gravel, if you want to think about them bigger, think about gravel, and if you poured water on gravel, it would run right through.
Right.
Well, it's similar with these aggregates. Once you start to get aggregates, that water is able to infiltrate and you can store it in your soil.
Rather than just sit on top and run off somewhere.
Right, taking your nutrients with it.
Right.
And so what's cool about this, so we had the NRCS came out and did soil health assessment training and did water infiltration tests on our land right up here where we're talking. And they infiltrated 2 inches of water, and with that they're able to calculate how much water I can infiltrate per hour. They said I can infiltrate 60 inches of rainwater an hour on this right here. So you think about western South Dakota, how important that would be to store your water. And that's what...
So every drop of water that gets onto this piece right here is going down in there. No matter, even if we get one of them torrential rains of 4 inches in 45 minutes, it's all going into your soil and you're storing it.
Yeah, that's the goal. We get to keep it.
How many different species did you have in here, and what'd that look like?
So yeah, we always try to shoot for 8 to 12 to sometimes higher, different species of things, and we just kind of set a goal on what our goals are, what we want to do. So do we want a higher carbon mix? Is our ground getting too bare in the springtime, so we want to put in this higher carbon, higher lignin type stuff? Or do we have too much cover and we're not able to plant through it? Then we'll add more of a carbon consumers like brassicas, kale and collards and turnips and radishes and those sort of things will consume carbon.
Okay.
And so you kind of try to balance that, but
So
what we're trying to mimic is Mother Nature on the prairie, and she has all these different species growing all the time, and so that's what we try to mimic. Our goal is to build organic matter on top, because
why?
For every 1% organic matter, I can store another 16 to 25,000 gallons of water per acre.
Quite a bit of water we're keeping here rather than running down with some of the soil into the creek and leave it.
So a lot of people see this dried up old stuff and they think that, well, that's not going to feed a cow all winter. It does. So you just have to figure out, how much does your cow really need? Does she need this really high potent, high protein feed? Does she need supplement? And so what I do is when we start grazing this, we set up electric fence paddocks. So we're trying to keep the cows to get a fresh ration about every 3 days. And that way, otherwise they'll go through and they'll eat all the ice cream first.
Right. All
and
the
then
best
they get,
stuff. Yep.
and then that changes their biology in the rumen, and then they have to switch it back over for this high lignin stuff.
So by giving them only so much, it forces them to eat this whole diversity in their diet. They look like they're doing pretty good.
Right, so these cows haven't had anything.
They haven't had any
They
supplement?
haven't had hay since they were baby calves in 2020.
Wow.
Beside their mom, and that was only for a short while, so they don't even know. They just graze.
They just graze.
So one of the things I look for when I come out and I move electric fence around, and I would just check the cows and make sure they're doing okay. First, I would visually inspect the cow, and then I look at her dung. And you see how it's just a perfect plop, and then there's just a bit of a dimple in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's telling me that her protein content is about right. And I can look at it, open it up and look at it, and I can see how long the particles are. If they're, start to get over a 1/4 inch long, then she's not digesting very well.
So to a lot of people, the untrained eye, this is just a pile of poop out in the pasture. But if you know what you're looking at, you can really tell what's going on with her digestive system by looking at this.
Right.
And if she's getting enough protein and whatever else. That's what you're telling us?
And you can send samples of manure in, and we've tried to figure out how is this working for the cow? Do we need to test the plants and see what kind of feed value we have in it? And so that you can do that, but you don't know exactly what they're going to eat. And so you can sit out here and watch them and say, okay, I saw her select this and write it down. I saw her select that. Or you can go here, what she's already been through.
Right.
And you can, Texas A&M has it's called a nutball sample, or nutball test, and you can take a sample of manure and send it in, and they'll tell you exactly how much protein's in it and organic matter and that sort of thing. It's been a pretty simple system. It sounds tough, but what I like about it is we know that roughly 80% of forage goes through a cow and comes back out as dung and urine. And so all of that's going back in my soil.
Right.
So we're able to build soil and store water.
Right.
And we're starting to see more bugs show up, good bugs, and more birds, and more wildlife. And all those things are attracted to it because the soil's healthy.
So this is a pasture that we will be coming into. One of the next ones in my bale grazing system. I don't know if you call it a system or not, but I just set bales out, and you can kind of see them out in there too. Where you can see a spot over there where there's little weeds, where that was maybe some on it last year, or it changes an area. sometimes maybe it doesn't look like it's for a good thing, you know, but with time it is, you know. When putting nutrients down, we're putting cover down, it takes a little time for it to break down, but in the end, I think it's a positive down the road.
So how long have you been doing this somewhat this way?
Probably 5-6 years, something like that we've done the, you know, just starting the tractor, you know, every couple weeks and feeding like that. Yeah, and we still do some conventional feeding, daily feeding, you know, depending on time of year. When we get to calving, we might do some of that too. But when it's convenient and when I have the room to do it, I like to do it like this if I can.
And so what is your goal here for bale grazing? Why do you, I won't put words in your mouth. Why do you do this? I mean, it seems.
It started off probably as convenience. It's, you know, the cricks here, a lot of my hay is on one side of the creek and the buildings are on one side. A lot of times the cows are on the other, and it can be hard to cross in the winter times when we get a bunch of ice and things. So for me, I can go out, I can start a tractor every 2 weeks. I go out, I set my bales out. I don't have to cross every day. Convenience was the big thing, but then I start seeing the benefits of it, you know, in areas. If I have like an old crested hayfield, that's kind of where I started doing it, and you could really see the
production,
the benefits, and you could see right where them bales sat 2-3 years later. This is an area where we've done some, I guess what you call intensive grazing. What I've done here is some daily moves, sometimes twice daily moves.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do with that is to get the animal impact in a smaller area, spreads the manure and urine a little more evenly. You know, they're not moving back to this water source all the time and leaving it there. And then there's some animal health, I think, benefits to it too. That you're giving them some fresh grass every day, maybe even twice a day.
Right.
I think there's definitely some benefits to that, to giving them that fresh.
So instead of we're in this big pasture for a month, you're taking an electric fence and you're just chopping off a little bit at a time every day, or sometimes even twice a day, moving those cattle just a little bit. So that's kind of trying to mimic, you know, the natural cycle of animals moving more than just staying in one spot.
And then to go a little bit further with that, then so they're only in maybe an area for, I tried to limit it, you know, 3, maybe 5 days tops that they are in an area, and then not come back to that area until it's fully recovered, so to where the plants are recovered. Depending on moisture, that could be anywhere from 3 months to a year.
Right.
You know, depending on how things are.
And so part of that is looking at the leaf stage, looking at how many leaves and how long those leaves are on that particular piece of grass. If you get down to each actual piece of grass, that rest and recovery time is really important. I mean, those plants can take a lot of abuse and they can get grazed pretty hard as long as they have time to recover.
And overgrazing, I think for a lot of people is looked at as a number of animals, but it all has to do with time.
Right.
You know, you could have 10 cows on 1,000 acres, and there could be plants that get overgrazed.
Right.
You know, because of that, because they come back to it and eat that fresh growth, and you start killing the roots.
Obviously, in western South Dakota and beyond, 2021 was a pretty tough year. Not a lot of rain, a lot of moisture, not a lot of grass growing. What did you see? I mean, hopefully some of the benefits of what you've been trying to implement over the last few years helped you out during that. What happened there?
Yeah, and drought affects everybody. It affects me too. You know, you have to always think of destocking and what your next step is. I do feel like, you know, and I've seen that, and I mentioned that before with the animal days per acre, that, you know, maybe I can get a little bit out of that with my management and stuff. And I think there are improvements to it. To me, you know, basically with the drought, I have to go to longer rest periods. But when we do get rain, I get quicker recoveries, I think, than something that's been grazed continuously. And one of the other things from this that I see that really helps with those decisions is the fact that, so when I'm, you know, I have my cows on this 80-acre piece, I know how many days it lasted. You know, we don't get any rain, I can calculate out how long, till I need to make some tough decisions. It helps me set those points and helps me make those decisions a little sooner than if I just had them turned out and then whoa, wow, it's getting shorter grass, what do I do?
A lot of the soil moisture depends on that organic matter. And we're trying to increase that organic matter, and that doesn't happen overnight, as you're finding out, as I found out. It also doesn't go away overnight, right?
Yep.
So we can maybe be a little harder on those pastures and not see the residual effects for years down the road, whereas guys with a lower soil organic matter and lower soil moisture, when they beat those pastures up like some of them had to, that's going to be hard on them. Even if we get a lot of moisture in the next 2 or 3 years, that might be hard on them, where you're probably going to recover faster.
I would rather sell cows and take it easy on the ground than go the other way because of the time that it does take. If you are hard on it for too long, it takes a long time for that stuff to come back and get to the productive state that it was. So,
Years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's better to take the lumps.
Right.
There's more cows out there.
Yep.
I guess if you need to, you can buy some. It's hard to sell cows. And I don't know that those are tough decisions, but if you see what's coming and you have time to think about it and hopefully make the right choice.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think that we want to try to relay to the folks in town that aren't out on a ranch, don't have cows, don't understand as much as what we do is. It's not just an animal out there that we see. We care about these animals, and they're there to eat the grass, and we make a living. But like you touched on, it's hard to sell them. I mean, it is. I mean, you get to know that one ornery numbered cow, and it's more than just an animal out there that we're making a living with. They get to be a part of our lives, and it can be pretty tough to make those decisions.
It is. Yep. And those, but. Like you say, we have to, and when it comes down to it, there's life under the ground too that we got to think about too when we make those decisions.
Taylor rides just as well as any man.